do one thing that every team in the country can't do. We got a chance to step up, man. We got a chance to step on the ledge, you know what I mean? And to me, I think it's a free fall. To be elite, you got to take a free fall. That means you can't be afraid to go to the edge. And coach said, jump. You said, how far, coach? Where you want me to go? Every guy got a chance to do that today. If you're elite, grab somebody today. Take him with you. There's no more average in this program. There's no more average in this program.
The Rutgers Scarlet Knights saw more success last year than they are accustomed to. Greg Schiano, though, is always overachieving in his first stint and in his second stint at Rutgers. Hi, everybody. I am Kyle Monangai, your host here at Bash's College Football Show. You can find all my social medias linked down below. I'm not going to waste your time with that. All I'm going to ask for you guys to do is comment down below what you think Rutgers is going to do. And if you have a team you want me to do a video for, comment that down below. And certainly, if you like the video, like the video. That helps boost the algorithm, and it really is going to help me as a small content creator. I really appreciate that. So the Rutgers Scarlet Knights come off of that 7-6 football season, bringing back a lot of continuity. They did not lose that much. You have Taj Harris, the wide receiver, leaving and off to the next level and greater things in life. And then you get Max Melton as well, a really good cornerback. He's going to be gone, but they're going to be fine at both those positions, and we're going to address this here in a little bit. Now, what they lost in the transfer portal was both quarterbacks, Evan Simon, and they also lost Gavin Wimsatt to the portal in the spring. So those are a couple of guys that they would have liked to hang on to, but they just didn't, and it's fine because they did address the quarterback position in the transfer portal, and we'll talk about that in a second after I do mention that a key player that did transfer out was Rene Conga, or it might be Reen Conga, going to Louisville. He's a two-deep player. He's not super significant, but he's a rotational value player. He's a pretty solid one. Now, talking about that transfer portal, Ethan Kaliakmanis comes in at the quarterback spot, and offensive coordinator Kirk Ciarrocca definitely has a lot of familiarity with Ethan Kaliakmanis, and with what they want to do, you know that he's going to give them a lot more game management role, and there's a reason that both Ethan and Dino, the wide receiver, younger brother of Ethan, came over to Rutgers. It's because they do like the vision that Kirk Ciarrocca has for them. And part of that vision is going to be handing the rock to this guy a whole lot. Kyle Monangai was the star of this offense a year ago. If you're not familiar with Kyle Monangai's game, he was the most underrated running back in the Big Ten last year, and maybe even the country. He's a really good back. Absolutely went off last year, was super consistent. I mean, out of all the running backs that Ohio State played in the regular season, not including Cody Schrader in the bowl game, the one that had the best production and the best day was not Blake Corum. It wasn't Nick Singleton or Katron Allen. It was Kyle Monangai. It wasn't Audric Estime either. Like, this guy is a beast, and he's really good, and you guys need to get familiar with him, that's for sure. At the wide receiver position on the outside, they're going to be throwing it to guys like Christian Dremel, who's going to be a really good experienced player, and having experience like him. And then you also got Brantley and Long. That's going to help. And then they add in a transfer portal player and also older player too, with a lot of class experience, but experience at a lower level of football. And that's Dymere Miller, who was probably the best on the East Coast when it came to FCS football. He went for 333 in a game that they lost against New Hampshire. Like, this dude's a beast. You see him make plays with the ball in his hands, and it is magical. But the question is, will this guy be able to do it at the Power 5 level? I certainly think that he's going to be able to produce as long as he does get his looks. And they're going to find creative ways, too, to get him in situations where he's going to get the ball in his hands in space where he can use that beautiful vision that he has to be able to make some plays for this Rutgers team. Their offensive line is going to be headlined by guys like Holland Pierce, and then also they have Tyler Needham, both tackles coming back. They have experience on the interior, with one of the guard spots probably having to be a little bit paired together. But the thing I love about this offensive line is whoever's going to be starting for these guys, they have been in the program for at least 3 years. And that's what I do like about Rutgers there, is they're going to have a lot of that continuity on that offensive line, blocking ahead of a guy like Kyle Monangai and protecting Ethan Kaliakmanis. Now on the defensive side, they brought in a transfer in Malcolm Ray. He's an interior defensive lineman from Florida State who's going to start for this team, was a rotational player last year on that really, really deep Florida State team to the point where he didn't really hit the field, but he's still going to be a really good player and definitely a good prospect that they got out of the portal. And it does help that on the edge, you have Aaron Lewis, who comes back for yet another year. And this dude is an absolute freak show of a pass rusher. Not to mention the fact that you got 2 linebackers that you can put your trust in Muhammad Torre and Tyrone Powell. These guys are super good security blankets, especially against the run. I think teams are going to have a whole lot of problems running the football against this Rutgers squad. And then in that secondary, they're going to give people problems too. Though they lost a guy in Max Melton, they still bring back 2 safeties in Flip Dixon and Shaquan Loyal, who are going to be really good. Then a physical DB in Desmond Igbinosun, who's the older brother of Ohio State's Davison Igbinosun. He's a really physical, strong lockdown corner. And then also you get a little bit of a boost for Robert Longerbeam, this cornerback for Rutgers, who's really filling the shoes, the big shoes that was Max Melton's, but he did play a lot last year. And if you are a Rutgers fan, you are very familiar with this guy. So the Rutgers Scarlet Knights overall, you're looking at this team, this defense with Greg Schiano running the show a little bit. They're going to be really good. Kirk Shiraka has a lot to prove on offense, but you got that security blanket of that run game with Kyle Monangai, and I think this team is going to be a fun one to watch for. As you see, Rutgers, their over-under is going to be 6 wins as we predict them, and that's going to be the interesting part of whether or not Rutgers will make a bowl game. So let's talk about that here. I think they get 2 easy wins. We don't need to spend too much time about this. This Rutgers talent is way better than it had been in Howard. Not that great of an FCS school. Akron, not a great MAC school, not a great G5. Both of these teams, they should both be wins. At Virginia Tech, even though it's off a bye, if you've heard me talk about Virginia Tech, they're great, all right? I love how Virginia Tech is looking this year. I am super high on this squad. This isn't a shot at Rutgers. It is going to be hard to go into that place down there in Blacksburg and be able to get a win for anybody this year, let alone the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. So out of conference, they go 2-1 before hitting conference play, and they win a Friday night football game against Washington. Back and forth on this. I think Washington's probably going to be the better team. But if you look at the schedule dynamics here, though Washington doesn't get really a too difficult game before this, they're not going to be like coming off of a bye. This is going to be a short week. They're coming from here to here. Like they're going all the way across the country. And Rutgers is going to have that home field advantage even off of a loss against Virginia Tech. Now, that's where it gets interesting, and that's where I almost flipped the pick. Not only do I think Washington is probably a slightly better team than Rutgers overall, you're also coming off that Virginia Tech loss, but I really think that they're going to be able to build off that loss, especially if they're competitive. And my gut's just telling me to give them the win here because I do have them losing their next 2 games. At Nebraska, I think their talent has upgraded. I think this is going to be a really good game, though. That defense for Rutgers is going to travel, but overall, I am a little bit higher on Nebraska this year than I would have been, say, this time last year. I just think that having a security blanket at quarterback, though he's just a freshman, all you got to ask him to do is use that arm talent to keep it away from the defense. And Nebraska is just a couple games better in the win column. Then you get Wisconsin. I'm also kind of high on Wisconsin. I like the fact that they return a lot of continuity on their wide receiver core. They're going to still be able to run the ball. And the big question is going to be Tyler Van Dyke. Tyler Van Dyke is not what he needs to be for this Wisconsin team. They will go on the road to Piscataway and lose this football game. 100%. Rutgers is good enough to beat Wisconsin at home if Wisconsin has another lull of a year like they've had the last 2 years. But I think Luke Fickell's going to at least get the ship right enough to be able to win a game like this on the road at Rutgers, but very tough, very close, a second consecutive tough loss against a former Big Ten West opponent. Then they continue on with a home win against UCLA. Look, UCLA this year, not very high on. I think they lack a lot of talent, and I think that they lack the coaching experience. Chip Kelly leaving is a really big deal to me, and I'm just not super high on UCLA in their first year in the Big Ten. At USC, I'm higher on USC. I like the potential jump that you're going to see out of Deuce Robinson and Zachariah Branch at wide receiver. Miller Moss looked the part in the bowl game against Louisville. And that's going to be a tough trip for Rutgers to make. Again, Friday night, the same reason I gave Washington the L to Rutgers is kind of the same reason why I think Rutgers isn't really going to be able to stick with USC. I think USC is going to be able to score enough, and I think their defense is just going to get better and better throughout the season, and I think that Rutgers falls in the Coliseum out west. They beat Minnesota off of the bye, and that's the Kaliak Manis and Soraka revenge game right there. I think they win that game, and I think they honestly win it pretty handily, though I don't think Minnesota is all that bad. I think that that's just going to be a little bit of a tough travel for Minnesota to make in November out east to Piscataway in that type of motivation within that locker room. So I'm giving the win to Rutgers right there. And I think they win on the road at Maryland, back and forth with that. I'm just not high on Maryland. I think they got a decent wide receiver core. What's new? But they do not have the quarterback. Like, I'm not sold on Billy Edwards. Personally, I power rank them as probably the worst Big Ten quarterback. And he's going to have to show it to me. It's not a slight on the kid. I hope the kid has success. And I hope that I'm wrong whenever I diminish a kid like that. But at the end of the day, I think that Maryland's probably going to be toward the bottom of the Big Ten this year, and I think Rutgers is going to be a better team. I think they also beat Illinois. This was definitely a tough one. I did my Illinois preview, and I picked Rutgers to win this game. It's just in a tough spot for Illinois' schedule, and the fact is, too, that I think that Rutgers' defense is going to be able to absolutely shut down that operation offensively for Illinois. And then the final game of the year, when you've heard me talk about Michigan State, I always talk about I'm not sure what they're going to look like. I trust in Jonathan Smith. I don't think they're going to have a great season, but I think they're going to be good enough to get this win late in the year. And, Michigan State, they're going to be an up and down type of team, but Jonathan Smith is a good coach. And I'm thinking he's probably going to develop the squad to be playing their best football at the end of the year. So overall, that question on whether or not Rutgers makes a bowl game, I do have them making a bowl game indeed. I think that they're going to go 7-5, 5-4 in conference with probably that fluctuating between one game. I think their ceiling is 8 wins, but I also have a hard time looking at that schedule and being like, I don't think Rutgers is going to make a bowl game. Like, I don't see the pathway. They do not make a bowl game. I'd be shocked, and it'd be a massive disappointment with all that they have coming back if they don't make a bowl game. 7-5. 5-4 in conference, splitting that difference between what I think their floor and their ceiling is. It's a very narrow margin of what I think Rutgers is able to do. And this is also off of the heels of dodging Penn State, dodging Ohio State, dodging Michigan, dodging Oregon. Like, they got a pretty good break in the schedule. And I think this sets up well for Rutgers to go 7-5.